Ecology Unit Test. In ideal circumstances, rabbits can increase their population at a tremendous rate. The graph above details a rabbit population in an ecosystem over a 20-year period. Utilize the graph to answer the following two questions. Number 1. Generally speaking, the more abundant resources are, the greater the reproductive rate for a population will be. During which of the following years did the rabbits enjoy the most abundant resources? A. 1994, B. 1992, C. 1999, or D. 2007. Number 2. Which of the following is a likely explanation for what happened to the rabbit population growth rate during 2011? A. Resources were plentiful. B. Tornadoes and other natural disasters affected the rabbits. C. Carrying capacity was exceeded in 2010, resulting in emigration and death. D. None of the above. Number 3. Population density is found by dividing the number of organisms in an ecosystem by the total area of the ecosystem. If 50 square meters of an ecosystem are surveyed and 5 rabbits are cited, what is the estimated population density of the rabbits? A. 1 rabbit per 5 square meters. B. 1 rabbit per 10 square meters. C. 0.5 rabbit per square meter. D. 0.1 rabbit per 5 square meters. Number 4. Sea otters are extremely important to the success of an ecosystem within which they are found. For example, sea otters feed upon sea urchins, which in turn feed upon seaweed. If we remove the otters, the urchin population explodes. As a result, the seaweed population is devastated, resulting in starving urchins. This example demonstrates that sea otter is a keystone species, B. prey item, C. herbivore, D. invasive species. Number 5. Species interact with other species in their environment constantly. Sometimes the interaction is direct, and sometimes there are degrees of separation, but there's always interaction. Consider the holiday plant mistletoe. Mistletoe grows on trees by inserting roots into the tree and deriving water and nutrients from the xylem and phloem of the tree. If the mistletoe is not removed, the tree will eventually die. Which of the following terms best describes this interaction? A. Commensalism, B. Mutualism, C. Parasitism, or D. Predation. Utilize the energy pyramid above to answer questions 6 and 7. Number 6. As we discussed, it all starts with producers, or autotrophs, when we are talking about the energy flow in an ecosystem. Which of the following is correct concerning energy pyramids and examples of producers? A. Producers are found at level 4, an example is a lion. B. Producers are found at level 1, and an example is a grasshopper. C. Producers are found at level 1, and an example is a tomato plant. D. Producers are found at level 4, and an example is a flower. Number 7. Efficiency is a big topic when we discuss energy flow within an ecosystem. Suppose that the producers in an ecosystem are manufacturing 25,000 calories of energy per hour in an ecosystem. How many calories are available to the secondary consumers in that ecosystem? A. 2.5 times 10 to the 1, B. 2.5 times 10 to the 2, C. 2.5 times 10 to the 6, or D. 2.5 times 10 to the 3. Number 8. Which food chain arranges components of this food web according to energy flow? A. Arctic poppies to Arctic hares to seals. B. Grasses to caribou to Arctic foxes to polar bears. C. Grasses to lemming to snowy owls to Arctic hares. D. Plankton and seaweed to fish to seals to snowy owls. Number 9. Which statement correctly compares the energy available at various trophic levels in this food web? A. Available energy is highest in the polar bears and lowest in the seals, snowy owl, and Arctic foxes. B. Available energy is highest in the fish, Arctic hares, lemming, caribou, and lower in all other trophic levels. C, available energy is lowest in the polar bears, highest in the mosses, lichen, grasses, poppies, plankton, and seaweed. D, the same amount of energy is available to organisms occupying all trophic levels. Number 10. Food webs detail all feeding relationships and also give information concerning energy flow. According to the food web above, which of the following is a false statement? A, rabbits feed upon berries. B, black bears have more than one food source. C, energy found within black bear flows to rabbit. D, red fox does not feed upon deer. Number 11. How does most of the carbon in an organism's body return to the environment after the organism dies? A, decomposers break the body down into simpler compounds. B, heat from the sun causes the carbon in the body to evaporate. C, geological processes cause the body to turn into a fossil fuel. D, rainwater dissolves the carbon into the body and carries it into the ocean. Number 12. Which of the biogeochemical cycles discussed in class has no atmospheric component? A, carbon cycle. B, nitrogen cycle. C, oxygen cycle. Or D, phosphorus cycle. Number 13. Use the diagram to answer the two questions that follow. The above diagram represents a succession event. Which of the following statements truly reflects what the diagram shows? A, secondary succession over a few decades. B, secondary succession over hundreds of years. C, primary succession over a few decades. Or D, primary succession over hundreds of years. 14. Area 6 in the diagram represents a particular stage of succession. Which of the following is most true of Area 6? A, it contains pioneer species that will be present for only months. B, it contains a climax community that will remain until disturbed. C, it contains a transition period that is moving toward climax community. D, lichens will arrive in a matter of few years. Number 15. Which of the following is an example of ecological succession? A, moth species evolving gray wings for camouflage. B, a dog chasing a bird to use it for nutritional value. C, a pine forest slowly replaces a grassy meadow. D, leaves dropping in a forest. Number 16. Pesticides are integral to protecting our homes, places of business, and food crops from pests. However, there are consequences to their use. Among these is the issue of biomagnification. Which of the following best describes this unforeseen consequence of pesticide use? A, treated pests are magnified, meaning that they grow in physical size. B, overuse of pesticides cause houses and crops to rot, magnifying the decay process. C, treated pests that survive the application contain the pesticide in their tissue. The pesticide then enters the food chain, increasing in concentration as we proceed through the food chain. D, there are no consequences of pesticide use. Number 17. Which practice limits the effects of human activity on the environment? A, harvesting all the oak trees in a forest. B, sending used aluminum cans to a landfill. C, using wind turbines to generate electric power. D, allowing nutrients from fertilizers to enter a river. Number 18. Excess nutrients from fertilizers can cause too much algae to grow in a freshwater ecosystem. How can a system be designed to reduce this effect? A, develop a barrier that groundwater passes through as it enters the body of water. The barrier should allow water to pass through but filter out nitrogen and phosphorus compounds. B, develop a cover for the body of water that shades it through most of the day. The cover should reduce the amount of sunlight that reaches the surface of the water. C, develop a filtering system for the body of water that removes pesticides from the water on a regular basis. D, develop a pH sensor that releases substances that keep the pH of the body of water within set limits. Number 19. Firewood is sometimes sold at roadside stands in areas where camping is popular. People can buy the bundles of firewood and transport them to their campgrounds. Students design a scanner that could detect the presence of insects in the bundles of firewood. The scanner would alert buyers that firewood with insects, eggs, or larvae present should be used only at campsites near the site of purchase. The solution these students have designed would be most useful to prevent which problem? A. Deforestation near campsites. B. The introduction of non-native species. C. Overconsumption of firewood by campers. Or D. The release of greenhouse gases as the firewood is burned. Number 20. As the human population grows, humans use more resources such as water. Human activity also causes pollutants to enter the water systems. Which statement describes a likely result if these trends continue? A. Clean water will be a limiting factor for the human population, but not for populations of other organisms. B. Clean water will be a limiting factor for the human population and for most populations of other organisms. C. The water cycle removes all pollutants, so clean water will not be a limiting factor for the human population or others. D. Humans and other organisms will become adapted to using polluted water, so clean water will not be a limiting factor for populations. 21. How does deforestation contribute to global warming? A. It decreases the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. B. It increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. C. It decreases the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. D. Both B and C. Number 22. An ecosystem near a coast has been affected by a hurricane. Trees and nesting sites are destroyed, and many organisms die in the flooding and winds. Which statement best predicts the impact of this environmental change on the ecosystem? A. Biodiversity instability will both increase. B. Biodiversity instability will both decrease. C. Biodiversity will increase, instability will decrease. D. Biodiversity will decrease, instability will increase. Number 23. The spiny hedgehog is a small insect-eating animal whose body is covered by spines. When threatened, the hedgehog rolls itself into a ball with all of its spines facing outward. Which type of adaptation does the spiny hedgehog exhibit when threatened? A. Camouflage. B. Mechanical defense. C. Chemical defense. D. Mimicry. Number 24. Each year, green sea turtles travel back and forth between their feeding and nesting grounds. This is an example of A. Kin selection. B. Circadian rhythms. C. Hibernation. D. Migration. Number 25. Conifers are associated with snowy northern forests, but some species of conifers grow in the deserts of Arizona and New Mexico. Which of these conifer adaptations is least likely to support the plant's survival in the desert environment? A. Waxy coating on the needles reduce water loss. B. Branches that bend under heavy loads. C. Thick bark to protect the tree during wildfires. D. Wide, shallow root systems to capture water. Number 26. Snowy egrets are birds that breed in coastal and inland waterways. In the past, hunting the birds for their feathers greatly reduced the snowy egret's population. Law now protects the egrets from hunting, and the population has recovered. Today, many wetlands are being drained and filled with rocks and soil so that humans can build on the land. What is the most likely impact of the draining of these wetlands on the snowy egret population? A. The snowy egrets will be unaffected because it will adapt to living in dry environments. B. Snowy egret's habitats will be reduced and its population will decrease. C. The snowy egret's habitat will be affected so that its population size will remain stable. D. The snowy egret will move to forest and its population will increase. You have reached the end of the assessment.